Get them hyped for season 3, Carter.
Except it isn't Stomp the podcast. It is Don't Sleep on Football 2025. Carter here.
I was hoping you were going to do a Camp Rock reference, if I'm being honest. The
Fuck.
Camp Rock part.
Man. For some reason, I was really thinking about Stomp today. Do you remember Stomp?
I do remember Stomp. Is it still a thing?
No, they closed.
Oh, okay, so I guess not.
They had their own dedicated theater in like the middle of nowhere, lower down or upper downtown, and they stopped. And I'm like, that's not even a recession indicator. That's a take all of your money out of the banks, invest in gold, and make sure you have enough food to last the atomic winter level disaster.
What are you gonna do?
Not close Stomp.
All right, I was out of ideas anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of was the same show for like 30 years. And I can't, it's not like Wicked. You can't just be like, oh, there's a new lady who's the Wicked one. So, the ceiling was a bit limited. You asked me to hype them up, and what gets people more hyped than Stomped? Everyone's 7th favorite New York tourist trap.
I'm interested to talk about what the first 6 are, but that's a different podcast.
I picked that number randomly, but now I'm actually trying to think. Well, Empire State Building, obviously.
Yeah.
I guess we can work the Freedom Tower into there. A number of Broadway shows can be 3. Radio City and the Rockettes, 4. Statue of Liberty / Ellis Island, 5. And something involving pizza, 6. There. Done.
Did you even say Times Square?
No, fuck. Well, I guess I kind of crowbarred that into going to see a Broadway show. But if we're doing a subcategory of Broadway shows, it would have been Phantom, but that's gone. So now it's Lion King, Wicked, honestly, 6 might be up there now. Aladdin, there's a couple. I'd have to sit down and really look through like the regulars now because, we actually did have a couple big high profile closings. But again, we're not here to talk about that. No. We are starting a brand new season of the newly titled Don't Sleep on Football.
That's right. All right. That's all I had, apparently.
Yeah, that's right. Correct. Anyway, how's your day going?
Apparently not exactly Mr. Thinking today. So.
But yes, so to get you guys a sense of what we're doing today, we decided, due to scheduling conflicts during the summer, you are on vacation for like 3 straight years. Yeah. I always have some nonsense going on involving a hospital. We decided to kind of just cram all of our basically we're cramming the homework in. We just had our fantasy football draft. Football is in season again. We are T-minus 6 days away from the first game of the season. So we decided to kind of cram all of our preseason stuff into a single episode and basically do a vibes check for the entire league.
It's about time we're just back into the swing of things.
Warm up. Let's remember, let's remember who the football teams actually are.
Who we are, who they are. Really just get back into the swing of all this, Johns. All right.
Oh, yes.
How do we want to do this?
Do we want to start? I'm trying to think of what division do we want to start with.
Let's start with the low stakes one. Let's start with NFC South.
NFC South. Lovely. All right. So I'm going to kick us off with the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons, who last year, I believe, were 1 or 2 games out of the play. Oh, you know what? I remember now. What happened with them was final game of the season, halfway through the game, they discovered that they would not be going to the playoffs because of tiebreakers. They were a bewildering 8-9 last year, started off hot with Kirk Cousins going 6-3, proceeded to go on a 4-game losing skid before pulling the plug and getting Michael Penix in. Um, in terms of big changes for this season, kind of the obvious one is that they are now going to be starting Michael Penix, the Washington quarterback, a bit of a surprise draft pick 2 years ago. Um, and otherwise, they kind of have kept the same team. How are you feeling vibes wise about them?
Um, I don't. I don't really have anything drastic about them, which is both a good thing and a bad thing.
Hmm.
Um, they are very. Uh, do I want to say fortunate? Is that the word I want to say? But one of the perks of being like having no significant change for this like before the season is you already have like kind of a not a little bit of a mentality, but a little bit of a you already know what's going for you and like what you have to kind of look forward to and how you should be adapting to it. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
they
Well,
they saw what
it's
was
weird.
wrong last season. They can easily define what is wrong, like or
Right.
what problematic spots there are for this season. And
Yeah,
it's
they were weird though, right? Because it's like they're kind of like Schrodinger's like they've been the potential team
Schrodinger's
for how many
team.
years now? Like because you're like they could be a Super Bowl contender, but also they could just be bad. Like it does on one hand it feels like a fresh start because they effectively have a rookie quarterback. You know, he only played in like 4 games last year. But at the same time it's like, all right, well, if they're not going to win now, when are they ever going to win? You know,
Yeah.
this is the culmination of everything of like, all right, we got Drake London, we got Kyle Pitts, we've invested in the offensive line, we've got Bijan Robinson, and now we have the quarterback. And it's like, well, if they lose now, then there's no plan. Then
Yeah.
what, you're going to blow it up? You didn't achieve anything.
It's yeah, there's no plan, there's no real like real right or wrong or anything like that that they've got going for them. It's just kind of they exist at the moment.
Right. But then everyone's like, oh, look at all this potential. Look at all this potential on paper now that they finally have the gunslinging quarterback. And here's the thing, I want to like them. I really like Michael Penix. He's like, one of the things that sort of, as I was just listening to various football podcasts in the off season, is just something to do to kill time. I've really become like anal about the sort of like playing the quarterback position honorably. And I think Michael Penix plays it honorably. He slings that shit. Like, there's only one quarterback who had a higher average depth of target than him last year, and it was Anthony Richardson, who probably won't play this year. And I'm just like, that's the kind of football I want to see. Like, no more playing it safe, no more like protecting your precious touchdown to interception ratio. Sling it, throw it deep, get all these weapons the ball. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I'm also like, yes, but he was also the reason why he wasn't a top 5 pick was he had 4 season-ending injuries in college. So like this could really go either way. Honestly, the only notable thing they did otherwise, other than just accepting that Kirk Cousins is going to be $100 million on the bench, which
It's
is a choice.
hilarious. It's kind of
Right?
hilarious.
I can't believe they didn't. I mean, I guess it's like we can't have spent $100 million and not at least get a 4th round pick for him, right? I think they were really just banking on someone trading for him, and now
I
they're just
think
stuck.
yeah, I think they're really hopeful that Kirk would provide some form of capital for them. That just kind of didn't happen
Hmm.
because it was a very weird QB based off season, if you ask me. Like,
It was, but right. It was a weird one though because it wasn't like Matthew Stafford moving or Russell Wilson. Like it wasn't high profile guys move or like quote unquote good guys moving. It was kind of just guys moving.
yeah, it was a lot of backups, a lot of like um, different other guys doing it too.
Hmm.
So it was interesting to say the least. Of
Right.
okay, like for example, we have like Kenny Pickett going to the Browns, and then now he's on the Raiders. right? Right? He went to the Raiders.
Yes. Wait, is he?
Yeah,
God,
he's a Raider now.
that's
Yeah,
who traded for him?
but it's
Why would
just
you?
like it's like this is just one of those like super weird like moments of the NFL where it's just like I don't really have any crazy investments in this at the moment.
Mhm.
But it's like there's that. There's the Giants quarterback room, which is
Right.
kind of crazy if you want to think about it, with like Jameis Winston and
Russell
um,
Wilson,
yeah, New
Jackson
York.
Dart, who's
Let's
apparently like
stomp.
the new New York hotness.
Yeah, Jackson Dart replaced recently removed Tommy DeVito, who is already
Is on the
picked up
Patriots
by the
now.
Patriots. Yeah.
Not content with throwing away their number one overall pick last year, they got another draft stock ruiner in Jackson or in Tommy DeVito. Um, but
They got a
yeah,
first
no, you're
round
right.
for
Because
they gave a first round for him.
no,
Oh,
no,
I thought you.
they no. I meant because last year Joe Milton cost them the number one overall pick that they really needed,
Oh,
and Tommy DeVito has previously cost the Giants their number one overall pick. Um, well, we can talk about that when we get to them. Honestly, yeah, you're right, because it's like it's a weird space, because it's like I feel like 28 28 to 30 like 28ish of the teams kind of have a at least a vision at quarterback, where it's like even if they don't love it, they at least understand what's up. And then you just have the Giants, who are just kind of meandering. You have the Browns, who probably didn't trade for Kirk Cousins because they couldn't justify having $200 million quarterbacks who may or may not play on their roster.
yeah,
The Saints, who have kind of just given up. Um, but it's like, again, the Jets is a weird spot because it's just Justin Fields, but it's like at least they know that's the plan. It'll either work or it won't work, and we'll figure out what's next after that. Honestly, the only other note I had for the Falcons was like I talked a lot last year about process. That was kind of one of my big sort of bugaboos. And you know what a good example of that is? Their draft. So in the first round, with the 15th overall pick, after years of people yelling at them to draft defensive players, they drafted Jalen Walker, a very, very talented sort of hybrid. He can play linebacker, he can rush the passer, from Georgia. And then several picks later, they traded back into the first round to get James Pierce Jr., a defensive end from Tennessee. And it's like, on one hand, yes, you need all the defensive help you can get. The Falcons have been in the bottom five for sacks for several years now. But when you're a team that's kind of in the middle and you're not sure if you're really going to be a contender or not, you can't really afford to be trading back into the first round to double dip on positions, especially when it's like you have to trade a first round pick. The Rams might have a top 10, if Michael Penix gets hurt, the Rams just have a top 10 draft pick now. And that's what I mean in terms of process. Like, that's why there's such weird feel. It's weirder than when they decided to draft Michael Penix out of nowhere. Of like, okay, but what is the process? Like, what is your plan here if this doesn't work? It feels like you're kind of just doing things to do them. Otherwise, I don't really have any strong feelings about the Falcons.
yeah.
I guess it would be fun for it to work out because it's like they're a cool looking car, but you've never gotten out of the damn. You've never gotten out of the damn. What do they call
Driveway.
that? Garage? Yeah, that's a word that exists. Um, shall we move on?
Yeah.
The Carolina Panthers, who last year, after a particularly difficult start where they went 1-7, kind of turned it around and had some good vibes going into the end of the year, some close calls and some actual wins, and ended up 5-12. In terms of major moves for the team, kind of the biggest one was their draft, where they used a top 10 pick to get Teteroa McMillan, the wide receiver from Arizona, who I really like. I think he's grossly underrated. Um, and honestly, for them, it's another one where it's like a lot of the investments they made the previous year are expected to cash in. Kind of the biggest thing for them last year was starting the year, Bryce Young looked absolutely unplayable. The first overall pick quarterback they had traded up to get, they had benched him for Andy Dalton, and a absolutely absurd set of circumstances where Andy Dalton was in a car accident and could not play, forced Bryce Young back into the fold, and he looked competent. He looked poised. He looked like a guy who maybe if you don't draft him number one overall, certainly you draft him in the first round. And now it is kind of a year where get him one more weapon, sort of have a set of skill position players that make more sense. And just basically, this is a test it year where you got to kind of decide, all right, are we going to roll with Bryce Young into the future? Or is this the safe off ramp point where we can go look for a new quarterback and build around them?
Yeah,
Honestly,
I would say
I
that's
think the
that
vibes are
decision time, and
right.
I think we'll know by the end of September what their plan is.
Right. Because, like, they've kind of become a sleeper team where a lot of people are penciling them in for the playoffs in a weird NFC where, like, we have like two or three really good teams and then a whole lot of like, well, they could be goods.
Yeah,
I agree with you. I think this thing is going to reveal itself very quickly, but I'm suspicious of the good vibes, but I'm going to say they have good vibes.
I think I think they have secretly better vibes than it would seem, and
Hmm.
that's in a good way. Um, I think I think the biggest part about them is they're so underrated, or not underrated, but they are so like down in the dumps, for lack of a better word,
Hmm.
that them doing anything good could result in them being considered not a complete bust.
Right. Yeah, I guess that's the tricky part of it because it's like, we're like, yeah, the vibes are good. Things are turning around. And someone, it's the quit having fun meme where we're on the couch being like, yeah, Panthers, woo. And someone's like, they were still 5-12 last year.
Yeah,
Bryce Young's EPA was only slightly better than Anthony Richardson's. Quit gassing him up. And I'm like, yeah, but like when you look on paper, it's like, okay, the defense isn't great. But all of the investments in the offensive line paid off. They were actually a very good running team last year. They were surprisingly, again, you watch the end of Bryce Young, and it's like, all right, the numbers weren't blow your pants off great, but you watch the tape and you're like, oh, this is why you draft this guy number one overall. He actually is pretty good at maneuvering the pocket at his size, facilitating the ball, and keeping the offense rolling. And you're like, all right, you add Tedero and McMillan, and the problem was you didn't have a number one receiver before. Now you do, and that just makes everything make more sense. Like everyone else gets to be in a role they're more comfortable in. And like, yeah, I guess I'm excited because I'm like, and honestly, regardless of how the season goes, I guess I'm positive on them because it's like, yeah, either you do take that next step and you are in the playoffs and you can start building something, or like, yeah, you still have all those pieces. You just got to find the different quarterback. I feel like that's if you can't be a contender, if you can't be like a guaranteed like we're going to be good this year, that's probably the best place to be. Of like, well, this team has potential. We just got to figure out if the quarterback has potential.
yeah.
Shall we move on to the next member of our NFC South?
Hit it.
All right, we are covering next the New Orleans Saints, God in heaven. Uh, I'll just cut to the chase and say the vibes here are stinky. But yes, they ended up going 5-12 last year as well. Their biggest change came where sort of halfway through the offseason, Derek Carr reported having problems with his shoulder and then abruptly retired, deciding he didn't want to go through the rehabilitation process for it. The fact that a lot of Saints fans were happy about this kind of underlines the problem. I believe, their new head coach is Kellen Moore
Yep.
after a sort of changing of the guard. Um, after Clint Kubiak, the offensive coordinator, had well, basically, do you remember the whole weird thing where they scored 47 and 44 points to start the year and then completely
Yes.
cratered?
And then they just fucked up.
Yeah. Basically, what happened was what everyone said would happen of like, yeah, but if they have one offensive line injury, Derek Carr's not going to want to get hit and the entire thing's going to fall apart. And sure enough, that is what happened. Um, yeah, well, can you say the vibes are bad if it's a sort of quiet resignation to the fact that it's like, it's time. It's time to not be good. Or rather, it's time to not try to be good.
I mean, yeah, I guess you can kind of get away with it as the Saints of just like cuz it also doesn't help that they had terrible luck last season.
Mm-hmm.
Like they ended very unlucky, and you can't really deny that. They had like everybody get hurt.
Yes.
They were really just like, I don't want to say they were phoning it in, but they were really just struggling to make it like actually work.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. Again, it's like you could go into this year in a scenario where Derek Carr didn't retire and you weren't like going to put in Spencer Rattler or oh my God, what's his name? The guy from Ohio State. They drafted a quarterback in the second round from Ohio State.
Oh yeah,
I always forget his name. I actually didn't think he was that bad, but then you watch him in the preseason, you're like, ugh. Or no, they drafted the Louisville guy, Tyler Show, who
oh
was
yes,
like
show.
Tyler
I think it's
Show. I never know
pronounced
how to
show.
say it. He was the only quarterback who participated in the combine, or at least the only one who was like projected to go in the first 3 rounds. He is very old. He began his career at Oregon and somehow ended up at Louisville. He looked very bad in the preseason, like borderline, like I cannot believe you spent a second round pick on this. But yeah, in a scenario where Derek Carr didn't retire, and it's like, all right, surely the offensive line won't be as injured this year, right? You could kind of squint and convince yourself that maybe, well, basically, it would be the same argument the last couple years for the Saints of like, hey, we actually have a lot of talent. We have some good players on defense. We have a couple sort of blue chippers on offense. If we can all just stay healthy, we can win a weak division and like maybe make a splash in the playoffs. But now that quarterback's out, because again, they were trying, like they were losing, they lost to the Bucks in a tight game last year to end the year. They lost to the Rams in a tight game. They lost to the Commanders in a tight game. Like a couple of those like one score games flip, they are in the playoffs. But like now that the quarterback's out, it just feels like you kind of can't pretend that. For people who aren't as familiar with the Saints, basically for the last 5 years, they've been doing an insane economic scheme, for lack of a better word, where basically all of their premium contracts, they modify them at the end of the year, basically push like add years to it so you can spread the money out and also give the players very big signing bonuses which don't go against the cap. Basically, you are giving yourself cap space by spending a little money now and using the credit card to push bills down the line. The problem with that is you can only do that so many times before the players refuse to, at some point the players are going to want their money and probably not be in New Orleans, or they're just, going to be ready to retire. And on top of that, when you combine that with the fact that the talent is slowly draining away, you kind of get into a scenario where you don't have a particularly good team, but also you owe a lot of money to a lot of people and you can't afford to get new talent. And it feels like the bill has finally come due. They can try to stop it, but it feels like if you were going to finally just accept it and like eat 1 or 2 bad years to like financially clean your books, it would be now.
Yeah, I think I think Derek Carr kind of set them up to properly do that.
Yes. He kind of
Um,
did them a favor.
yeah, I think I think he set them up to do that very well. So because they gotta, excuse me, they have so much like just happening
Mhm.
that or that's happened. Oops, hit the wrong button. That's on me. We're still recording. We're good. Um, you like it feels bad because you see people like there's people with talent on that team. I don't hate Chris Olave. Um,
He's genuinely great, but he quietly's had more concussions than Tua.
yeah, I don't hate Rashid Shaheed. I believe that's how you pronounce his name.
Hmm.
And then you have like
Great.
Alvin Kamara, who's quite a talent. Can't deny that.
Yeah. Even in his advanced age, he's one of the most efficient players, like offensive players in the NFL.
So it's like,
Even though he was like borderline depressed during last year when he was getting like 12 catches a game and he's like, this isn't a real offense. I hate this. I hurt.
yeah. So I think it's like it sucks kind of for those guys, but the um what is it? Not the challenge, but you they shot themselves in the foot with their whole cap thing, and you're kind of at this opportunity now where you can just commit to sucking.
Right. Like, you know you're in a bad place because, like, fandom is inherently irrational. Creating a parasocial relationship with 52, wait, no, 53, pardon me, I forgot the kickers on the team, with 53 strangers who you probably don't know, on top of, like, you know, who are all working for a billionaire. Like, that's inherently irrational. Do you know how bad a situation has to be where a fan base isn't trying to talk themselves into, no, we can win it all this year, and are rather just completely pivoting to, yes, we are finally giving up. God, what a beautiful day. It's a pretty bad situation, Chief. Um, and to wrap up the NFC South, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, kind of low key one of our darlings from last year, had a very fun 10-7. Um, uh, Sort of finally, more or less completely locked in that Baker Mayfield is their quarterback going forward. The only one of these teams to make the playoffs. They lost a very fun game, 23-20, to the Washington football team.
That
I literally forgot their name there for a second. Um,
that was a good game.
uh,
Won't deny that.
Yes. And it feels like they are kind of they out of all these teams and out of a lot of the NFC, they are kind of one of these sneaky teams where if they end up in the Super Bowl, people probably wouldn't be shocked. They brought in Hassan Reddick, a sort of great journeyman pass rusher at this point. They re-signed Chris Godwin, who will probably miss the beginning of the season due to a
I
brutal
think
dislocated
it's
ankle last year.
confirmed he's going to be out for the first 4 weeks.
Thank you. Um, and they brought back their incredible offensive line, re-signing Ben Brenson. And honestly, it's so funny. They are another team who kind of just bring people back. But that is the advantage of bringing in Tom Brady and winning a Super Bowl is that, like, no one feels the need to ring chase. If you're willing to pay all your favorite guys, they will come back. Honestly, I would say the vibes, and they also got one of my favorite players from the draft, Emeka Mbuka, a very good. Basically, he has all of the Ohio State pass catching records because he's the one guy who stayed for his full time there. The word out of camp is delightful on his front.
Love that.
I would have said the vibes are sky high if it wasn't for the fact that Tristan Wirfs, their left tackle, is currently, it's up in the air whether or not he will be ready for the start of the season due to a left knee procedure. And also, they did lose their offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen, to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I do think it, right. I do think it's another one where we will know pretty early how this is going to go because Baker Mayfield is no stranger to having to change offensive coordinators pretty much all the time.
I mean, he did like 4 changes last year, or not last year, the year before last year alone. Like,
Mm-hmm. And I am willing to give them some grace because it's like, all right, but all of the talent is still there. It will be
yes.
interesting to see if it was a matter of talent or brilliant scheme. Because again, like I said, I think the vibes are like sky high for the most part. I do think, like, if I was going to pick a team to win the Super Bowl that isn't one of the handful that are like usually appraised for it, I would say them.
I would say, at least going into the season, they probably have the division relatively locked.
Mm-hmm.
Like they would be my guess of like they're going to before week 18 beat the gap of we're in, we're locked in for the divisional slot and we can be comfortable based off of just vibes and the relative talents alone.
Right. Because
Um,
even in a scenario where the Falcons live up to their potential, I'm not rushing to say they're going to, beat the Bucks. I just think the Bucks are straight up better.
yeah, I think the Bucks are better, and with the Falcons, it's like you have people like Bijan, you have people like Drake London and stuff. It's like you have Kyle Pitts, everyone's fantasy darling, but it's a matter of what are we gonna
Yeah.
do with you? Like, what can we do with you against legitimate competition? And I think
Right. I
that's
don't need the Buck. We don't need the Bucks to prove it. We've seen them prove it a
yeah,
lot, actually.
yeah. The Bucks don't need to prove anything because they're what was it? What did we say last year? The Seahawks were the pacer team, where if you're worse than the
Yes,
Seahawks, you're a bad team. If you're better than the Seahawks, you're kind of you're
you're a good team.
good team. And I feel like the Bucks are constantly on the, or recently have been on the above Seahawks level. Like they've had some bad stretches, but overall I think they're at like on par or better than the Seahawks. And none of the rest of the teams in the division feel that way. And
Hmm.
that's the opinion of you gotta you gotta figure something out. Also,
Right.
we're gonna probably need to make a new Pacer team because it is like a brand new Seahawks this year.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm actually skimming through. I'm like, who the hell's the Pacer team for this year? Um, the Bengals, maybe? I don't know. We'll workshop that
We'll
as the year
figure that out as
progresses.
we. I was gonna say
Well,
as this episode goes on.
I'd argue this year Tampa is like a different kind of Pacer team. I think they're the Pacer team for contenders, where if you can beat them, I
You're a
think you're a
contender.
serious contender. Whereas if you lose to them, I'm like, all right, because as much as much potential as I think they have, I don't think they're like in the top end. Like, you know, if you pet, they didn't beat the Commanders last year. They beat the Eagles, but that's like a weird circumstance thing. Like,
The Eagles
they
can
can go
never.
toe to toe.
The
Yeah,
Eagles can like if they're away at Tampa Bay, it's just like a. All right, we're probably gonna lose this one right off the bat because I don't know. There's some black magic or some shit.
yeah, they
Tom
just put the
Brady
Eagles in
had like
hell.
hired a witch to put a spell on what is it, Raymond James Stadium, I believe.
Yes.
And
Um,
yeah,
but yeah, like the Ravens, Chiefs, Bills, you would always favor them. They're good to be like, all right, you can run with the big boys. Like, but yeah, no, I think that's a safe place to put them. I think that's a good wording for it. Shall we move on? What do you say to the NFC West?
I say hello, NFC West. Uh,
Howdy, howdy, howdy. The Arizona Cardinals are first up. They are an interesting team. I'm doing this alphabetical
yeah, I
in
figured.
case. Um, Well, I'm gonna say personally, I have them in like the bad vibes situation because for a number of reasons. But to recap how last year went, and I kind of need to remind myself because they were pretty anonymous for a huge chunk of the year, honestly.
Yeah, I mean that whole division
They
was its own entity last year. That was the big thing, where it was they were all fighting for like the last week.
Oh yeah. They ended up 8-9, just out of the playoffs after back-to-back back-breaking losses to the Carolina Panthers in overtime and the Los Angeles Rams. They have largely brought back the same team, not trying to reinvent the wheel. Um, I'm just trying to think of how to describe them, honestly, because again, it feels like a lot of their big moves were made in the previous off seasons as they were investing in offensive line, as they were, adding more to the defense. They brought in Josh Sweat, Zay Jones, he's still in the league.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, this kind of was an off season of like holding the purse. Every now and then you'll have an off season. Like I would argue the Phillies in baseball were that this off season, where at some point the GM and owner kind of like close the purse and they're like, this is just gonna be what the team is. You either win it or you don't. And a lot of like the hope is that with a few minor tweaks on the defense, they won't have to win shootouts. And honestly, kind of just a hope that like another year in the system, Kyler Murray kind of is able to elevate his game a little bit, get
yeah.
Marvin Harrison Jr. a little more involved. Like the money
Mar-
is spent, you got to win, but at the same time, I'm like, yeah, but I don't think they're gonna win.
yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr. like now no longer rookie and stuff. It's like all right, I can see him feeling more comfortable, being more comfortable. They got Trey McBride, James Conner, like you said, Josh Sweat. Um, I think they've just enhanced enough their team where they didn't like suffer any loss over this last off season.
Hmm.
Excuse me. Like as you like, uh, people know, it's like there's always like a flow of like you're either gonna be like you could theoretically be better than off season or better than last season or worse, and it all depends on like I mean outside of plays and stuff like that. But it's like your players, like the players that you lose and the players that you gain, like Madden lists them all at intentional like skill levels and stuff like that. And I feel like
Mhm.
they stayed relatively balanced. And I think for them it depends on like their season as a whole because they got it looks like they have the NFC South and the AFC South on their schedules, or some teams from both. Yeah, no, they have both South divisions on their schedules.
Honestly, I think that's the
So
biggest advantage. Like, if they want to, like, you know, they could probably squeak to a decent record based off that, and that might be the
yeah,
difference.
yeah, and then like outside of their own division, they also have Cowboys, Packers, and Bengals, which are um, a lot heavier hitters.
Mhm.
So I think I think based off of their strength of schedule and depending how the rest of their division does, because there's been a lot more shakeups on the other teams than these guys.
Mhm.
I think it's going to be the matter of if they can just kind of squeak out wins, as opposed to actually like I don't think it's going to be dominant performances if they win, but I do think I can see them having a close to 500 and being on the more positive side of a record.
Right. But I feel like that's very telling that we're not framing this in a, like, here's how they can be a competitive, great team this year. And we're just like, can we just like crap our way to like 10-8 or 10-7 and
Yeah.
get the arbitrary like extra playoff spot? And I'm like, when you're in that situation, it probably is better to just like pack it in. Honestly, the more I think about it, I really think my sort of hang up with them is I think at this point, like I think like it's frustrating because Kyler Murray isn't bad. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna sit here and pretend he's bad. He's had success before, but I also think like the idea that he is a guy who's going to elevate your team to a point that you're a regular contender, like that feels like it's kind of over, and you haven't proven you can do like the 49ers thing of building a team around a good quarterback, not a great
I mean,
quarterback.
I feel like Brock Purdy was just put into the role of being there on a team with a good quarterback or with good players
Well,
for a quarterback as opposed to the other way around, but you know what I mean.
yeah, you're not wrong, but yeah, it's just like I don't know. You know what's really messing with my vibes for this team? So there's been a lot of kerfuffle because Marvin Harrison Jr. has come in absolutely yoked to camp, and it's like you're a wide. You don't need muscles as a wide receiver. You need to be flexible so you don't get hurt as much. And like that sort of it. That's just kind of an energy that I feel like filters over the entire team of like insecurity of like, nah, we're cool, we're good. And I'm like, which is funny because he didn't even have a bad year. He had like 800 yards and 8 touchdowns. That's perfectly adequate for a rookie. It's just we've gotten so used to like, you know, the Jamar Chases and Brian Thomas. It's tough because like all of the other other than like Keon Coleman and I guess Xavier Worthy to a certain extent, so many of the other like picks around him at wide receiver immediately made an impact, like huge impact. But like, yeah, there's just a weird insecurity to this team right now where it's just like I feel like they're either waiting for the luckiest break ever to get them a deep playoff run or the unluckiest break ever that causes them to go have a really bad record and everyone gets fired. I feel like that's where a lot of like middle of the road teams end, where they're
Mm-hmm.
like, can we just have the stars aligned once so we can get to like a conference title game and like, sort of celebrate that? Or can we just have the worst luck ever, everyone gets fired, and at least then things change, man.
Yeah.
Next up on our list, sorry, I really need a better. I need a two-screen setup. This is very hard to do on one screen.
It's the Rams.
Yes, the Los Angeles Rams, a fascinating team last year, kind of a sleeper team that almost snuck their way to the NFC title game. They ended up going 10-7. The division winner ended up winning one dominant playoff game against the Minnesota Vikings before losing a weird, chaotic game to the Eagles, 28-22, where they scrambled to make an incredible comeback in the snow and came up just short. In terms of major changes
That's
for the
such a
team,
good snow game. Sorry.
no, you're right. But I'm also like so much of the Rams hype is built around like they were so close. They almost won that game and I'm like, "All right, snow games you have to throw out though because like anything can happen in a snow game."
Yeah, snow games
Um
are their own entity, and I think it's just better linemen and better running.
mhm. Um, but yes, they ended up their biggest move ended up being signing Devontae Adams, the somewhat disgruntled wide receiver from the Raiders and Jets. Um, they who did they get? I think they traded. Yeah, I don't think they had a first round pick. They traded out of the first round, so now they have two first round picks going into this next draft. I want to say their vibes are good, but also they're in a terrifying situation where Matthew Stafford has basically not practiced the entire offseason. He has been dealing with back problems, and like they keep being. It's one of those where it's like, look, at the risk of being too personal on here, I did recently put down my family dog of 15 years, and it kind of has that energy of like, he's fine, he's fine. He keeps peeing in the house. He didn't used to do that, but he's fine. He
Yeah.
only ate 2 days out of the week, but it's all good. Where they just keep talking of like, well, he's doing walks, and I'm like, that thing humans have to do anything. I hope he's walking. This world is not very friendly to people who can't walk. Um, but like, yeah, and I guess that again, because I want the vibes to be good because at their full potential, this is a dynamic offense with two incredible wide receivers. Even after they let Cooper Kupp go, a really good running back and one of the most fun quarterbacks to watch in the NFL, and a defense that is the perfect combination of like high profile stars and absolute scrubs. And when all the pieces are moving together, they are one of the best shows on turf. The problem is you built all that around a 40-year-old quarterback whose back seems to be actively rebelling against him. And if he doesn't play, that means Jimmy Garoppolo is their quarterback.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember, I don't know if you watch that wide receiver show, but
Not really.
a disproportionate amount of that show was what's his name? Devontae Adams basically being like, uh, Jimmy Garoppolo's gonna fucking get me killed. He's going to throw a bad ball and I'm going to end up in the hospital.
Yes,
Um,
I support this.
yeah, no, he was so angry the whole show. He's just like, I got to get the fuck out of here, man. This is like literally like, no, I'm going to get hit across the middle and I'm going to get carried off on a stretcher. And I'm like, what do you do if Jimmy Garoppolo has to play then? So yeah, I'm kind of like, I guess the vibes are good.
I feel like the vibes are in a positive spin, especially after last year. Except they're so like talked about it a little bit with the Cardinals, where like they're out of like their division and the other main divisions that they play opponents were kind
Mhm.
of like they had the Cowboys, who are going to be way worse this year because of recent events, which we'll talk about in a little bit. They have the Green Bay Packers, who are also like on the opposite end, where they recently improved, and they also have like the Bengals, which is a very interesting team
Mhm.
because of how the Rams ended. Their three equivalents are the Lions, the Eagles, and the Ravens, where it's just like you're getting hit by like those guys are gonna possibly get hit by like a sedan. The Rams are gonna
Mhm.
be hit by a freight train.
Right. Right. The doomsday scenario for yeah, you're right. That's a perfect way of putting it because it's like the doomsday scenario for like the Eagles or the Packers is like, all right, well we go like 10-7 and like, we lose in the wild card round, but it was either injuries or like fixable things
Mm-hmm.
happened that like we just like say you can't win them all, dust ourselves off and like regroup for the next year. The doomsday scenario for the Rams is drafting in the top five. which fortunately, unlike the last time that happened, they actually have their pick. So it wouldn't be the end of the world, but it'd be really bad considering they are like one of the sleeper teams to go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing with them is how they handle their division. Because
Mhm.
I'm of the thought process this division is still very equal. Now that I'm putting a little bit of effort looking into the teams of it and stuff,
Mhm.
I don't. Yeah, so it's a matter of who, like, how do you want to go about this and your shenanigans?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's a good way of yeah. I weirdly it is like the NFC South derogatory or like the NFC South. Every team here is equal derogatory. The
Yeah.
NFC West. Every team is here equal complimentary. Where I'm like, while I struggle to see scenarios where most of the NFC South could win a playoff game, I can see I've seen the 49ers win a lot of playoff games. I've seen the Rams win a lot of playoff games. I've seen the Seahawks slightly more distant past, but like they're capable of it. And the Cardinals are also here. Um, but like yeah I think it's very similar where it really is like I think each team does have a mental approach of like look the main priority right now is just winning our division because then anything can happen after that.
Hmm.
um and I don't know it's I'm hopeful but well, again it really is one of the ones where it's like Matthew Stafford could come out week one look super healthy
Yeah.
sling the ball around the yard and I'll look like an idiot but there's also a scenario where the exact opposite of that happens.
Yeah. And there's also like the whole, because isn't he like working off an injury or like tightness?
No,
Something.
it's just I think he's had this back problem for like 4 or 5 years now,
Yeah.
and it just constantly sounds like the worst thing. No one's once you have back problems, it never gets better. I assure you, as someone with occasional back problems, like no one magically gets a good back after going through that.
Well, you
Um,
can. It's just years down the line and a lot of rehab and money spent. But
well, yeah. Um, But yes, up next is the San Francisco 49ers. Kind of the year from hell for those poor guys. Poor guys. They've been to 2 Super Bowls,
yeah,
but they didn't
they
win one yet.
no, not recently or at all. They've won recent. They've
Well, at
won
least with
over
this
the time.
iteration of the
Yeah.
team. They've won Super Bowls, but they haven't
All right.
won one since like the
The
90s.
way you worded that just put doubt in my head about it, and I was just like, "Yeah, wait, what?"
Well, because they've been so competitive for so many years, your brain does tell you like surely they've won one of these, right? Like one of the years they didn't play the Chiefs, and then you're like, no,
No, yeah. Um,
and then you're like, shit, that's not good. But yes, they went 6-11 last year.
yeah.
The year started off rough when, despite winning,
CMC
yeah,
disappeared.
Christian McCaffrey was having calf problems throughout the preseason. But despite being told, oh, he'll be ready to play, he could play tomorrow, he did not play the first game of the season.
Didn't
And
play the
despite,
first like seven or something absurd.
yes, he finally did come back when they were 5-6, but after twitching his knee against the Bills in Week 13, that basically marked the end of the season. They would go on a 5-game losing streak to end the season. You know, any hope that they could turn it around and still make the playoffs was gone. Brandon Ayuk suffered a knee injury; he's still out. Debo Samuel got pneumonia. He was a shell of himself for most of the year and is no longer on the team. Ricky Parasol, their rookie, who they had drafted that year, got shot and was able to come back halfway through the season. Um, yeah, kind of everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong for
Yeah.
them. Uh, and ultimately, this offseason ended with them re-signing Brock Bowers. Kind of their biggest move, other than letting people go, was signing Brock Bowers to not a massive contract, but a standard. Now you're paying premium quarterback money contract, which does mean they're not going to have the confluence of skill position players they have. Case in point, Debo Samuel's no longer here. Um, they are going to have to piece it together with slightly less, the sort of brand they were playing of positionless football where they would have like four guys who could do anything on the field is now kind of coming to an end. And they're in a weird spot where Could they turn it around? Is this the typical 49ers? We suck one year, we're good the next year? Or is this the end of something? Like, is the franchise fundamentally different now?
I think I think on I think their biggest issue is on a defensive side of things. They lost
Mhm.
two of their biggest hitters to the same team,
Yes.
by the way, which is also great for that team.
They like hanging out.
Um, but I think it's just going to depend on their weaponry. Like George Kittle, typically top four, I would say, tight end.
Hmm.
Like his entire career, pretty much. He's been top. He'll end top four. Christian McCaffrey depends on how he goes through it because he pretty much had a year off of football. Um, Even though he did play a little bit, and then everyone else in the fray of things, it's like, all right, what are we able to hold our own? Is the question at hand,
Right.
and yeah, no, like I said for the other guys, I think it's going to depend on their divisional opponents because they lost to Funga and Greenlaw, which are huge hits on their defensive side. Those guys were big players.
Hmm.
But they still have like Williams, they still have Warner, so it's like, all right, how big of a hit is this actually? And they still have Nick Bosa.
Right.
Um,
Again, a lot of the pieces are still there. It's like, all right, but can they all be healthy at once again?
yeah,
And like again, it's a slightly more imperfect version of what they've had for the last few years.
yeah, and it's the whole like how I said for the Cardinals, where it's just like, it doesn't feel like they really even like lost any overall quality and stuff like that. Um, it's I feel like a little bit of the inverse, where it's like on defense, you definitely did drop in quality, but also we haven't seen like their first round edge pick, Michael Williams.
Mhm.
Um, we haven't seen him play like real NFL football. Like there's the practices and the preseason games and stuff, but that isn't like you're not playing against like the top receivers sprinting like past you and stuff. You're playing people that are trying to make the team.
Mhm.
And like if you're playing against somebody main, it's going to be just who's like kind of warming up. So it should be interesting.
Yes. And the final team on the NFC West, the Seattle Seahawks, a weird, kind of discombobulated team last year, if you ask me. A team that kind of felt like it was finding itself at the end of the year, but then ended up coming up just short. They also went 10-7, but lost due to tiebreakers. They halfway through the year, they were at a perfect. Well, they were at a perfect 5-5. Proceeded to win one, two, three, four, five out of the last seven, coming up just short. But it also kind of doesn't feel fair to evaluate the team based off this because they are kind of a new team. Um, Basically, for a long time, the Seahawks have been. I'm trying to think of how to word this. But basically, the Seahawks for a while have been trying to finally do away with the last remnants of the Pete Carroll era. They fired him 2 years ago, brought in, oh my God, it's not Mike McDaniels. He's there. God, there's too
Oh.
many Mikes. Um,
Oh.
Mike McDonald.
Yeah.
Yes, Mike McDonald, the defensive guru from the Ravens. And this year kind of felt like the final dagger in getting rid of the old guard, kind of getting rid of the Pete Carroll era, the dynasty that wasn't.
Yeah.
They brought in Sam Darnold, hot off his first good year ever. They brought in Cooper Kupp, who had just gotten moved off of by the Rams. They
Yeah.
brought in Josh Jones, got rid of DK Metcalf, and yeah, they kind of rebuilt the team. And it's another team I'd like to see be good because I would like the Sam Darnold story to continue.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I'm just kind of bewildered why they did that. Like, look, I know Geno Smith is like not controversial, but like there's a lot of opinions on whether or not he is a top flight quarterback, but he was a pretty good quarterback.
He was a good
It,
quarterback. Yeah.
and the biggest problem the team had was they had no interior offensive line, and like they couldn't get their skill position players the ball. So
Mm-hmm.
your solution is to bring in a quarterback who famously kind of flamed out at the end of the year because they had no interior offensive line in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Is a bold choice, Cotton. I don't
I
know why you do that.
I will say I do like Seattle's line, like offensive line better. So I think that's
Mm,
kind of that goes in at least Darnold's favor of like the Seahawks aren't like lineman people comparatively to a lot of other teams, but
right.
they like I don't think they ever like at least in recent years they ever drop out of the top 10 like offensive lines.
Last year they did,
Or
but it's injuries, and I guess that's
yeah,
a difference between them and
injuries.
Minnesota.
Yeah, injuries and health are two very different. Like at full health are two different stories. Um, because yeah, they're typically very solid, and I have decent enough expectations with adding Cooper Cup. At I feel like JSN is starting to hit his like a a real prime.
Mm,
So I think I I like to think that this division is going to be very come and go again, but this is the big like the most uncertain I feel about any of the teams in this division just
mhm.
because of how drastically it has changed since last season.
Right. Like, it's hard to do even a vibes check or like an evaluation based off last season because you're like, yeah, it's not this
Yeah,
a
it's too
it's a
different.
completely different football team.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
and it's
different
like
QB
I couldn't
one,
see.
different wide
Mhm.
receiver one, two. I guess that depends
Yeah,
on who's going where
I
between Cup and JSN.
I guess the assumption is JSN will be like is ready to ascend, and I don't disagree with that because he has been very good. And
Yeah,
honestly,
no,
his
he's
biggest weakness is being behind two other guys.
yeah.
Yeah, because again, I could see a scenario where this works really well. The defense was really good at the end of the year, and also like you bring in Clint Kubiak, who when his offensive line was healthy was running a very efficient offense in New Orleans,
Hmm.
and like Darnold, even if he's not as good a game manager as Gino, he is like a physical, like he's a step up in terms of physical arm talent. Again, there's no, I don't think there's very many scenarios where Sam Darnold's going to be like the top 10 quarterback the Jets envisioned when they drafted him and then like subsequently went to three other teams. But he can be a pretty good, like, if you can't have a top five quarterback, invest in physical traits. Invest in guys who have really strong arms and are athletic and like, can you shape an offense around them? Incidentally, I was kind of shocked the 49ers didn't just try to go for him, but you know, you're already too committed. You pretty got you to Super Bowl. You kind of have to commit. But like,
Hmm.
yeah, there's plenty of opportunities for this to work. I just also like, again, it's another one where it's like other teams, if they do something wrong, it feels like a slap in the face. If this team goes wrong, their entire family's dying in a fire.
Yeah.
All right. Shall we move on to the next conference on our list? Shall we do the North and then loop back to the Homer division?
Yeah, I would say that's fair. And then we'll end after that because we're already like an hour in.
Right. We always say we're going to be brisk, but
We're never
and I
brisk.
feel like we're being brisk comparatively.
Yeah.
Uh,
We also waste like 15 minutes at the beginning with silly bits and stuff.
well, then why else would people? Why would people watch if we weren't doing that?
I don't know for the
All
actual
right.
opinions that we have.
Chicago Bears. Um, the true team from hell last year ended up 5-12. You know what's funny? I think people forget. Like momentum is a real thing. Like, you
Hmm.
know, if when and it's funny because people have talked about this with Caleb Williams, their quarterback they brought in to be the franchise savior last year, is like he's very much a like when the going is good, the vibes are great. When things start going wrong, it can kind of cascade and spiral. That's kind of what
Yeah.
happened in his last year in college. And going into their bye week, week 7, they were 4-2. Do you remember what their literal next game was?
Not off the top of my head.
They played the Washington Commanders, where in a
Oh,
scrappy
the
18 to
freaking
12 loss, they gave up an immaculate Hail Mary at the 11th hour.
yes, I forgot.
And then when you look over it and you're like, what happened? It's like, man, it's almost like they had a catastrophic loss and a young team with bad leadership couldn't recover. And then they proceeded to lose 9 straight games to get everyone fired, except the
Yep.
GM for some reason. Um, Honestly, their biggest move of the offseason kind of was bringing in a new coach, Ben Johnson, the darling offensive coordinator from the Detroit Lions, is here. He is bringing his sort of delightfully manic sensibilities to Chicago. In the draft, they brought in Colston Loveland, the tight end, and Luther Burden, the wide receiver. They reimagined their offensive line, and this is the most like in terms of like off-season discourse. This is the most like it's so Jover, we're so back team
Hmm.
because like a lot of the early talk out of training camp was like, oh my god, like no one knows how to run any of the plays. The vibes are terrible. Everyone's frustrated. Like, they don't know how to line up properly. Caleb can't take snaps under center. Oh, we're screwed. We're fucked. It's all over. And then like, they have one good preseason game against the Bills and it's like, we're back, never left. Everything's going to be great. Don't even worry about it. I think the margin for like it's another team with a pretty high margin, but I guess the vibes have to be better by default because did you end up reading that whole article about Caleb Williams? And like, well, one, it was mainly about how he tried to weasel out of going to Chicago when they got the first overall pick. Um, Basically, he was looking into like, can he go back to college for a year? Can he like go to a different league for a bit? But also, it underlined like how awful the coaching situation was in Chicago last year, where like they didn't have meetings. Like they didn't have meetings where they watched tape.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, no wonder why everything was awful. There was no leadership. So I think just on the merits of like, well, even if they don't have a great record this year, they at least have adults in the room, and that should change things for the better.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about the Bears really.
Hmm.
Like, is it weird? My biggest opinion on them is I'm a little upset they got Luther Burden the third.
Really? I love him. Do you not
Oh
like
no,
him?
I like him. I think it's a matter of I'd rather him go to a different team. That's it.
Oh, right. I'm actually like blood curdling furious the Bills didn't draft him when they had the opportunity.
That would have been a
Um,
huge get.
yeah, but the Bills aren't. No, I'll save that for when we do AFC. I can't get into that now.
No.
Um,
Yeah,
but
no, I got no real opinions on the
well, it's
Bears.
interesting because it's like last off season, it was like we get Roma Dunze, we get Keenan Allen. Like, yeah, we're getting this great wide receiver room. Like, yeah, this is the best situation a quarterback has ever gone into. And then you realize they can't block
Yeah.
and have no like strategy. And you're just like, oy vey. Whereas like, yes, they ate the draft was all about eating dessert. Our offensive coordinator cherry picked his new wide receiver and his new tight end to do silly wackadoo shit with. But
Yeah.
also they did invest in the offensive line. They brought in Joe Tooney. They brought
Tooney's
in
a very
more
good
interior
get.
offensive linemen. Yeah, they brought in like they ate their vegetables too this time around, which I think is the biggest thing. Um,
I also think that they're kind of going in with lower expectations because, like, last year it was the whole, like, this is us. This is
mhm.
going to be our year.
We're finally going to have our first 4,000-yard passer or 3,000-yard passer, I think, actually.
Yeah.
How many yards did he have last year? Hold on, I'm going to look that up.
But, no, I think the Bears are coming into the season a lot more humble, which is great.
Mhm.
But I don't think it's a matter of, like, it's out of team, like, mentality. It's out of
Right.
we kind of got rocked, and our division was a monster last season.
Yes, a very underrated part of this is the rest of the North was even better than projected.
Yes. And they were all in the playoffs except for the Bears.
Brutal. Well, what's funny, you even look at it, and it's like, I don't know. As bad as it was, it's still like Caleb had more passing yards than basically any Bears quarterback at
Mm-hmm.
3,500. He had 20 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. It really is like 68 sacks. And like, I think that's the frustrating part because like when we put the generational label on people, we want it to be great right away. But it's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, even the best player needs coaching. Even like, especially one who's like Caleb. It's the same thing with Patrick Mahomes, where it's like the physical talent was obviously there, but it's like he's got to get coached on how to like be a NFL quarterback. And it's like, no, you can't just run around for 5 minutes behind the line. No, you can't do that. No, you actually can't fit it in that window.
Yeah.
No one can fit it into that window. And like, unfortunately, that's a lot of what this year is going to be. So again, it wouldn't surprise me if they do kind of have a lower record than expected. But it's like, yeah, but now you're a year behind. In a lot of ways, it's kind of like what we saw with Trevor Lawrence, except with Trevor Lawrence, it's kind of never come together.
Yeah.
Um,
He's a very weird one.
yeah,
But
it really is the
yeah.
stress of like, what do Bears fans do if it doesn't work this time?
But like, here's the thing though. Like if their division is still super dominant again, because like it's kind of shelving themselves up to be one. Um, you got like somebody's got to lose these divisional round, like the interdivision games. That's just a
Mhm.
fact. And it just so happened it was the Bears last year where they lost a good majority of them. Um, let's see here. I don't want to have to count it out. I'm too lazy to. But like they lost a good majority of like they had to be the loser for. They lost both times to the Vikings. They lost both times to the Lions, and they beat the Packers once out of like the final week when the Packers were already pretty much guaranteed in,
Mhm.
and that then they only won by two. So it's a matter of like
It is funny if they're even just
yeah,
marginally better. If they're even just marginally better in the what's the word in their division, it'll look so much better.
yeah, and it's like the NFC West last season. All the teams were still in competition for like their the third playoff spot, like the 3 seed overall, and maybe the 7 seed, like for them, depending on tiebreakers and other things. But
Mm.
like the Bears division, everybody like if you like I think it was like halfway through like December, it's like if you're the team that wins out the most, you get the 1 seed overall.
Right, which kind of is one of the bigger themes of this conference. Like, and yeah, I don't know. I just like, I don't think they were even. I don't even think they're as bad as we thought they were last year. I just think, again, it's
Yeah.
like
The
three
argument
or
of them
four.
being
They
against
had like
juggernauts.
right. They were against juggernauts. They had like three high-profile, like big media calamities between the Hail Mary game, between the Thanksgiving game where they couldn't get the ball off in time. Like they just had like so many egregious fuck ups. I really do think it's like maybe the vibes are just fine. Like maybe they were always fine, and we just rush to decide if a quarterback's good or not too early.
I mean, yeah, yeah. No, it's just the argument of just how because I feel like I feel like now after the season and stuff, and yeah, heading into the next one, where it's just like really thinking about it, it's like yeah, it should be skewed of like Caleb's performance from last season. Like, there's got to be an asterisk on that note sheet because it's like, yeah, no, my team is going up against some of these crazy ass offenses,
Hmm.
and it's not the Bears, the Bengals argument where it's just like, yes, the Cincinnati Bengals offense is top tier, but the team overall isn't that great because the defense can't hold their own. Like you got
Exactly.
Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Burrow, they can easily rack up over 30 points a game, like if they really wanted to. But that doesn't mean shit if the defense is letting up 40.
Right. It's that this is going to be one of the more interesting ones. Speaking of which, one that I think will be very interesting, the Detroit Lions, who
Yes.
had arguably the best season, regular season of any team, going 15-2, dominating the Vikings to get the number one seed, only to lose to the Commanders in a truly brutal
Was
45-31 game. The first home playoff home game in Detroit Lions. I don't. Was it? It might have been history.
yeah,
It
quite
actually
some
might have been
time.
history. And yeah, absolutely stunned. A tough game where it came down to perfection from the Commanders and four interceptions. I forgot. God, Jamison Williams threw an interception. I forgot about that. Um, kind of died how they lived, really trying to do crazy trick plays on that one. Also, someone like making who the hell is cooking up there? They are not cooking. I just keep hearing things fall. Um, But anyway, yeah, so they had a very interesting offseason of kind of sort of shedding, for lack of a better word. They lost Ben Johnson to the Bears and defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn to the Jets. Um, in terms of like player losses, it was mostly honestly, I think it was mostly their center retired. Um, and they were able to like not really lose too much more. They brought in DJ Reed. They brought in a couple other like auxiliary pieces. The biggest thing for them is like it's going to be another case study in like how much is it the culture and how much is it the individual coordinators.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. No, that's gonna be their biggest thing. Is what mattered more is coordinator schemes, or was it just pure raw talent from the players? Because I'm not saying they're like an untalented team,
Mm-hmm.
but if you're working
Trying
in
really hard not to say that.
yeah, but if you're going against like some people that know your schemes and stuff, like Ben Johnson was great at his job, but now they
Yes.
play him twice.
Yes.
And um, do we know who replaced him off the top of our heads? Because I don't.
I believe he was like run game coordinator. I can double check his actual name, but they were both
But
inside
yeah,
hires.
it was.
And maybe
So
we're
if it
just
was an
sensitive
inside
to.
hire, then your argument is: did they learn their ideas from Ben? Are they
Mhm.
going to try and defeat their master?
Yes. John Morton, who previously was their offensive line assistant back in 2022. And like, yeah, it is like, as much as we love Dan Campbell, it's like, all right. The challenge, though, with getting like a culture guy as your coach, it's like you kind of are dependent on your coordinators knowing their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, you could also argue like this. It's crazy that they had the best regular season record because they also had the season from hell from injuries. I believe at some point they literally had to rotate in an entirely new starting defense. They lost their star pass rusher to a horrific leg injury, and it only got worse from there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like maybe you can just be like, well, that was a year from hell. Everyone's going to be less injured. Like, and all of the important talent, other than the interior offensive line, is still there. So maybe it will be fine. Like, if you told me they didn't make the playoffs, I would believe that. If
Yeah.
you told me they made the conference title game, I'd also believe that.
If you told me that they, at this point last year, that they they lost to the Commanders in the divisional round, I wouldn't believe you in the slightest.
Right? I'd be like, man, some crazy stuff had to have happened then. Um, but yeah, it's interesting. I do love though that they were one of the biggest teams pushing to get rid of the
Tush push.
divisions delineating home field advantage, even more than the Vikings, because in their head, both of those teams got screwed because they played so hard in that game. They both came into the playoffs like a little worn down, and I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, but that's the point. Like, for a league that is trying to add an extra week, like the last week of the regular season is real weak shit now. Like multiple teams actively not trying. The Bills threw that game against the
Oh,
Patriots to keep them from
absolutely.
getting the number one overall pick. They
You
took
watched you
Mitch
watched
Trubisky out
Josh
because he was
Allen.
too competent.
You watched Josh Allen show up, throw a pass, and then just be like, "Later,
I don't even
guys."
think he threw. I think he just handed it off,
Oh yeah, he might have
which is
just handed it
slightly more
off, but
dignified than taking a knee.
he was there just for the sake of taking taking a starting snap so he doesn't lose his streak of starts with the team. That was it. That happened.
Yes, it is hilarious. Like, again, that was the only good game from that entire weekend, basically. Like, no, you need at least something to play
Oh yeah,
for
no, that
in
was a
these
real
later
game.
games.
Although I won't
Uh,
deny, I do kind of like the throwaway week. I just wish that the teams would take the opportunity to get a little bit more experimental and silly with it.
mhm.
Like
Right,
really just put in your meme characters, um, put your backups and your thirds rings like really through it. And if you're gonna play some starters, do like the whole Josh Allen, like I'm gonna just show up for a second, hand off the ball, and then peace. Like
right.
silly things like that.
Yeah. Like, not just whatever the hell that was supposed to be. Speaking of a team that I don't know what the hell they're supposed to be now, the Green Bay Packers. A
Oh
fascinating year.
man.
It could have easily been a year from hell, but they were able to keep the ship right despite multiple injuries on to their wide receiver core, multiple injuries to their starting quarterback, and ended up going 11-6. And while they lost in the first round, it felt better than,
It felt like a
like
good loss in the first round.
yes. When you grade it on the curve of literally the opening game of the year, your quarterback plants weird, and you're like, oh, fuck, he might have just torn his ACL. I would
Yeah.
say this season was a success. Uh, I'm not even going to bother. Well, I'll say they got Matthew Golden, the wide receiver I really like. They finally drafted
Oh
a
yeah, I
first
was
round
gonna
wide
say
receiver.
they drafted a first round wide receiver, which is like a huge fill in the blank for the team.
Right. A very famous meme and a very famous feeling with the team of like they've needed a number one guy, like, their
They needed a
coach,
top tier receiver from the draft.
right. Because again, they're another one of those teams that's always like, oh, everybody eats. Like Matt LaFleur is one of those like masterminds who schemes up everyone. But you kind of do when you get to the playoffs and the Eagles have three number one guys, if you count Saquon Barkley, you do kind of realize the logical endpoint of that.
Yeah.
And I'm glad they finally accepted that. But that doesn't matter because literally yesterday they got fucking Micah Parsons.
Yes. Huge.
I almost called them the Cleveland Cowboy. They're gonna get relegated to better start learning Clevelandese, buddy.
Yeah.
Yes, they got Micah Parsons, arguably a top three defensive if not the best pass rusher, certainly in the top three in the
Oh,
league.
easily.
Yes, they got him for two first round picks and a defensive tackle, who I'm not even gonna. That's mean. I should look up who he is because I was gonna be like, doesn't even get a name, and I'm like, you know what? That's dickish. We're not gonna
Yeah,
do
no.
that.
He's
Um,
um
Kenny Clark.
Kenny Clark. Heard some things like he's like this is far from an equivalent exchange.
Oh, not even a little. Not even. That's the thing. It's not that. If you want to trade Micah Parsons, you're fucking dumb. But I could at least see a framing device where, like, you could get a king's ransom. Because, see, here's the thing. All the talk about Hendrickson getting traded, all the talk about Max Crosby getting traded, all the talk about Myles Garrett getting traded, those all come with qualifiers where you understand why it only made sense for their current teams to pay them.
Yeah.
Myles Garrett is 30 and he's had a history of like weird foot problems. Trey Hendrickson's 30 on the wrong side at 31, and like his sack production hasn't necessarily equated to defensive team success. Max Crosby is also 30 and he's never been like considered a top three defensive end. He's always been like kind of on the outside looking in of all the best defender discussions. Michael Parsons is 26.
He's not
He's not even in his
barely
prime
done
yet.
his rookie contract.
Yes, exactly. Doing the extension now was a courtesy, so you don't have to worry about it later. Because the price is only going to go up, he's only going to get better. Does not have a history of like regular injuries, and like guys like this are not allowed to go onto the market. Again, it was an interesting discussion about people talking about like analytics and the idea of like, oh well, what if we get a lot of players to do the work of a single player? That's cheaper and smarter, and it's like. Yeah, but if you have a Micah Parsons,
You
the
don't.
whole point of all of this, the point of the draft, the point of free agency, the point of everything is to get a guy like Micah Parsons, and you traded him before he's even hit the prime of his career. I am 4 years older than this man, for God's sakes.
Yeah. It
For
wouldn't.
peanuts. It should have been three first round picks at minimum.
Yeah. No. What a the hugest fumble.
Yes.
The Cowboys
Which
relegated themselves.
you
That's
know
it.
what? We'll talk about it. Yeah, we'll talk about both the Cowboys and Packers side on this, and we can just leave the rest of the Cowboys stuff to the Cowboys
Packers made
side.
out like a bandit. They, depending on how this goes and who they use the picks on, this could be a worse trade than the Browns getting Deshaun Watson. I
Almost
think
emphatically.
it has that potential. It just depends on how stupid they are with those picks.
Right? Even just like people talking about like this in relation to the Dallas Mavericks trading Luka Doncic to the Lakers,
Hilarious.
that's a better trade. As crazy and stupid as that trade is, at least at the end of the day, you got Anthony Davis for it. And it's like Anthony Davis is no Luka Doncic, but it's like at his best, he's still like a 30-point, 5 block, 3 or 4 blocks a game, 10 rebound. Like he's a one-man defense. And as stupid as it is, and it was stupid, you could close your eyes and kind of see the logic of like, I can see what kind of team we're trying to build here. This is just a surrender. And what's insane is like, again, there were so many like holdouts this offseason where it's like the guy doesn't show up to camp, he asked for a trade. Like it's like a sad little puppet show to fill the time of like, oh, we're going to go through these steps, we're going to pantomime that we're unhappy, and then we'll just sign the contract and everyone will go back. Terry McLaurin, Hendrickson, Chase, all these guys did the exact same play. James Cook, they all did the
Yep.
playbook. The difference is Jerry Jones, and again, it can't be said enough, is older than Joe Biden, and has had 3 or
Love that
4 incidents.
statistic.
It's because think about it. Honestly, one of the favorite lines I've heard about this as I've been trying to catch up on the news is there really are only 2 fields where someone being old and slowly going crazy kind of ruins your life, and it's if they're a politician or if they're a sports owner, because there's nothing you can do to change those things. Particularly on the sports ownership side. But like, yeah, he's had so many weird little instances where you're like, this guy's not all there. And again,
The
it's like
moon.
that the plan was absolutely no one thinks of the moon. No one thinks about like, hey, why am I pissing off his agent? Because that's what this comes down to.
Yeah.
Like you read his like farewell letter, it's very clear he wanted to stay. It's very clear he loved being a cowboy. He liked the prestige of it. But it's also very clear that Jerry Jones decided to big dog because like Micah Parsons owner or Micah Parsons agent has kind of become the agent for most NFL players. And Jerry Jones decided he was going to try and big boy him and be like, that's not how we do things, son. And yes, there's probably a racial coding to it too. And his agent clearly was just like, I don't care how much money they're offering you. We're done. We're leaving. And yeah, sure, you can get decent players you can get great players at the end of the first round. You can get a Lamar Jackson. You can get I almost said Cooper DeJean, but he was the second round pick.
Second round.
Yep, you're right. Quinion Mitchell.
Yeah.
But you can also get a Kyrie Elam. You can also get a Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and those happen way more often.
Yeah.
Just catastrophic for Dallas. And for Green Bay, it's like so much of their problem.
They
Right.
made out
Like again,
bandits this offseason.
bandits. Because who cares? 2 first-round pick. That's again, it's chump change. It should have, and you can tell they didn't shop this around because they could have easily gotten more.
Oh,
But like,
so much more. They put in very little effort into actually finding a true solution.
right? Because it's like so funny that for so long, the problem with the Packers was they kept drafting first-round defensive players and getting guys who are good but not good enough, like not the blue chip talent you need to make a defense. And it's like, oh, what if we just solve that problem? And much like getting like pure X number 1 wide receiver, all of the problems are just kind of solved by having a great pass rusher because everyone has to do slightly less, and it makes your okay cornerback room much better. It makes your linebackers much better. It makes the rest of your defensive line much better. And like, yeah, they immediately vault into like one of the 5 or 6 teams who are serious Super Bowl contenders.
Yeah, their acquisition of a first round wide receiver, and yeah, just the lessening of the impact that the backfield has to do because of Micah Parsons on the front line is a crazy enough amount that it's just like, all right, why, like, like you clearly like if in this hypothetical world of this, let's say this happened last year, they wouldn't be the 3. the 3 seed in the conference for most of the year, they would be
Mhm.
fighting for the 1 seed, regardless of how everything else went. Just because it's like they made such huge moves that I think
This is a
this
team that knows the
trade
window is now and took two really big swings with their
yeah,
draft and their
this trade
free agency.
that happened a week before the season starts, and they have Sunday Night Football. I think I forget who it was. It was either Tom Grossi or like Benchwarmer Brand or someone like that. Like one of the pretty popular guys were just like, like you got the Cowboys hosting the Packers in week 4 for Sunday Night Football. And this trade happened a week before the season. NBC execs are just foaming at the mouth of how much of a draw that's going to be.
Oh God, yeah. It's I don't even like. It's almost like again, it's one of those trades where you're like, that could never actually happen, and yet here we are. And like, yeah, this is what you want to see from a team who has,
They're
this is what you
trying
want
to
to see.
win.
Yeah,
They're
exactly. This is what every fan dreams of. An organization that just says, all right, you know what? Everybody says they want to win a Super Bowl. What if we just put all the chips in and just, burn the boats? It's now or never.
mm-hmm.
And what's amazing is like, even if it doesn't work, the consequences don't feel that severe. Because again, like last season was a season from hell in terms of injuries, and they still won 10 games. They still
Yeah.
could have maybe gotten a playoff win if the bracket was more favorable to them. Like, again, they won multiple games with Malik Willis, who at that
Yes.
point didn't look like a functioning NFL quarterback, who at that point got cut by the Titans because the cap space was more valuable
Than
than
his talent.
the roster space was more valuable than like the cap hit it would engender. Like they're going to be fine no matter what happens.
Yeah.
Like the worst is like they have bad injury luck and it's like, all right, we were like 9-8 and maybe we missed the wild card. Who cares? We'll try again next year.
Yeah.
Vibes, maybe the best vibes at any team right now, out of nowhere.
Yeah, no. And plus, you also have to consider the fact that some of their younger players, like Lucas Van Ness, Tucker Kraft, who aren't like those top tier like guys in their positions, but it's like they're pretty damn good. Same with like Musgrave.
Right.
Um, apparently, I can really want to list out tight ends. But
Yes.
it's just
Tucker
like,
Kraft is the best because he might be a top 5 tight end in real life. He's just not a good fantasy tight end,
yeah, he's not a good,
which is
but
why people have a weird spot with him.
yeah, he's got like he's definitely got more of a blocking impact than somebody like Travis Kelsey. I will say that.
Mm.
Because he's good, but he doesn't get this point. But it's like all those guys, those young guys, because it was a pretty young team last year, have another year on their belt, and it wasn't an easy year, which I feel like has a lot more give for experience than like Brock Purdy's first season when he was like
Right.
the whole like Mr. Irrelevant like thing, because he was thrown into a situation halfway through the year with people like Kittle, with Debo, with all these guys where it's just like, yeah, no, we could really put anyone in here, and you're surrounded by a quality veteran talent. It's like, no, you're gonna be put through the fucking ringer last year, still try and dominate, and it's like, here's your reward for like walking through the lava field. We're gonna get
Right.
you a new wide receiver, and we're gonna get you Micah Parsons, and we're gonna throw you guys back in there. And since you're technically the 3 seed of the division, you're gonna be getting a little bit more of give than the
Mhm.
teams from like the Vikings and Lions are getting,
Right.
because
Like,
they have the Cardinals, they have the Panthers.
right. I think that's a great point in terms of just like, yeah, normally the season from hell, you don't really learn anything from it other than, well, that sucked. Like, you have one of those seasons where your third guard is having to dress up for center because of like injury, random chaotic injuries. You don't learn anything from that other than a higher draft pick. But like, yeah, no, you learned, yeah, you can do this. And the organization rewarded you by being like, yeah, that sucked. We all agree that sucked.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what we're doing to make sure that doesn't happen again.
I think if they sucked, because honestly, with how their injuries and stuff went, The Packers should have theoretically sucked a lot more worse than
Oh yeah.
like last season. And I think the fact that they didn't and they had a good enough everything going on that it's just like we can afford to risk a person and two draft picks for a top tier defensive end. We can afford to. We don't have to enhance defensive talent in the first round because we know these guys can hold their own.
Hmm.
Because they had
I
some
actually can't
games
believe this
where
happened.
let me see. So not including their last game loss to the Bears because that really shouldn't count. Um, they held the they lost to the Vikings in week 17 by 2 points, and then the week before they held the Saints to 0. The week before they held the Seahawks to 13. They lost by 3 to the Lions, which proves field goals win games.
Yes, yes.
But like the vast majority of their games, they held the opposite team to under 25 points, I would say. And they won the majority of those games.
Hmm.
So it's like
Um,
you got put through the ringer and you're being rewarded because you did have to shit
yes,
with like half an offense.
yes. Honestly, like I don't know. It's just nice when competently run franchises get rewarded by bad franchises.
Mm-hmm.
Um, right. I do love, and I guess like we'll kind of skip over the Cowboys when it's time to talk about them because what else can you really say? But like, um,
I mean,
yeah, it's just so funny because it's like, someone is like, oh well, they're just saving up draft capital to trade up for Arch Manning when he comes out this year, and I'm like, Archie
no way.
Manning convinced his son to go back to college to not go on the Jets. He literally told the Chargers Eli wouldn't play for them. You think this motherfucker, after watching this, you think he's going to let his like nephew go, or great
Grandson.
nephew go to,
Something
yeah,
like that.
great nephew go to, because, oh, wait, no, it is grandson because Cooper, right. I was getting bewildered by lineage there. Yeah, you think he's going to let his fucking grandson, like the next heir to the throne, go to Dallas after this? Unless Jerry's son has had a private meeting with him where he's like, yeah, we already talked to the doctor. They said like 6 months, we're not gonna tell Jerry. And we'll sell the team after clean slate. You'll basically your son will be the face of the, or your grandson will be the face of, like, no, of course not. He's going to stay in college until he gets the exact cherry pick team he wants. He's not going to Dallas
Yeah.
as long as Jerry's there because clearly that's not a safe option.
No.
Anyway, shall we move on?
Yeah. I mean, they're still the
Minnesota.
Vikings. Yeah. In this
Oh
town.
yeah, the Minnesota Vikings. We're also here. The quietest 14-3 anyone's ever had.
Ever.
Absolutely dynamic offense. The resurrection of Sam Darnold.
His
Justin
career's
Jefferson
crusade.
continuing to be great offensive player. And then they lost to the Rams 27-9 and got sacked like 8 times.
Yeah.
It the
Just
vibes are
poorly.
weird because the vibes are weird because it's like, they added a lot to the interior offensive line. They traded to get Adam Thielen back.
I
They,
like
you know,
that. I
they
like that pick.
right. I'm kind of shocked the Panthers got rid of him. He's really reliable. Like, I know he's going to fall off eventually, but yeah, like they kind of did everything they needed to do, but all of it is centered around the idea that J.J. McCarthy, their rookie quarterback from 2 years ago, who missed the season due to a knee injury, will be able to come in and immediately be as good. And a part of me wants to believe that because, like, yeah, this seems kind of foolproof. This
Yeah.
seems kind of plug and play. But if he isn't, then where are we?
I mean, I have a good. I'm liking what I see. First off, they have a guard named Will Fries, and what will these fries do? I do not know.
Change the world.
Yeah, but they also have like Javon Hargrave now on defensive side, and like Isaiah Rogers, and you also I feel like T.J. Hawkinson very is very slept on for tight end.
Oh, yes, and he was coming off a pretty bad injury last year and still looked
Yeah,
pretty good. He's going to be the year after the injury. I think, like, low key, he's going to be one of the biggest, effectively, an addition.
yeah. I think this is going to be another very fun division, and it's going to be. I think they have potential to be relatively even. I think it's just going to depend on quarterbacks mostly.
Hmm.
I think, yeah, I think because they all have like pretty solid people on defense. They helped improve their defenses and stuff, and their offenses are all, I would say, decently equal. Like the Vikings have Justin Jefferson, yes, but I don't like their running back room as it stacks up against the others and who
Right,
they have on their front lines, basically going after their running backs. So I think it's going to be a very QB performance dense thing. I
right.
think, yeah, Williams versus Goff versus Love versus McCarthy is going to be the deciding factor.
All of them at interesting crossroads. Love is now expected. It's like, obviously they had Super Bowl sleeper hype last year, but now it's really like, no, now you
You
gotta
gotta
get back to the
ball.
conference title game at least. Goff after a pretty rough playoff, finally got to the playoffs, had a really rough go of it, and it's like, all right, well, can you keep the train going? It kind of felt like last year was supposed to be the year. Caleb,
Yeah,
like, hey man, you're only going to get excuses for so long. And yeah, McCarthy being like, can you keep this finely tuned machine going? I think you're right. In terms of the divisions, this is the most quarterback centric one in terms of like, yeah, it's really going to come
that's the
down
biggest
to
factor.
can they answer the questions?
Yeah, like their wide receiver rooms are all, I would say, net wide. I mean, the Bears is a little weaker because they don't have anyone that compete with like Justin Jefferson or St. Brown or something like that. Um, but it's like I like their running game a lot,
Hmm.
and it's just like, all right, you guys really have to just figure like it's going to be whose quarterback runs the best and play calling.
Hmm.
If you make a stupid play call, you could lose the division. That's how simple it is.
Hmm.
All right,
And that leaves us with the NFC.
let's fucking go.
Surely we, surely we won't take too much time on this one.
Honestly, I
Uh,
don't have a crazy amount of thoughts on three of the four teams.
right. Well, first off,
And
Dallas
fourth team
Cowboys,
is not the
who
one who you think it is.
I'm so curious actually. But the Dallas Cowboys, who kind of had a year from hell, went 7-10, had to play Cooper Rush for a huge chunk of the year, and
Yep.
Trey Lance. Um, they biggest thing is Dak Prescott is healthy. They have signed CeeDee Lamb to a long-term contract.
They're paying
They
Dak Prescott a healthy amount too. Let's not forget that.
Yes, as they felt the need to remind us several times to justify all of this.
And
And honestly, their biggest addition was,
star player Micah
yeah,
Parsons, still there. Oh wait.
yeah. I was going to say the George Pickens signing would be interesting because you really actually could have a pretty interesting offense, and now they're going to have that great offense because specifically passing. Because I'm out on Javonte Williams as an impact maker on as a running back.
I can
Um,
I can agree to that.
Yeah, I know it's not Madden. Sometimes people get a knee injury and they just don't recover, and
Hmm.
it's a bummer, but it is what it is.
And
I really think their main priority should be to see if Brandon Aubrey can kick a 70-yard field goal.
yep, it's arguably one of the best kickers in the league. Won't deny that, if not the
Um,
best. But yeah, and because the Eagles, who share their division, won the Super Bowl, they're gonna get put up against the AFC West, their own division,
woo,
and the NFC North, and then a couple other
woo.
miscellaneous teams throughout that. Um, I will say, I guess the only positive thing I could really say about this is I love the fact that the opening game of the season for everyone is the Eagles versus Cowboys. I love that. you are
It's
starting,
nice to just get it out of the way.
yeah, one of their games with like a top tier rivalry as the Super Bowl, like the Super Bowl flag dropping ceremony in Philly is against the Cowboys. Shit's gonna get rowdy. Shit's gonna be wild.
Hmm.
And Kevin
I
might not be
agree
playing D
completely.
and D next week because of it.
And that's okay.
I'll be very in and out. But yeah,
That's
no,
fine. I was going to have it on the TV.
they're in for a rough one. Won't deny that.
Yeah,
And
it really is just like, again, I kind of like Dak Prescott. I do think he's a little underrated in terms of like pure passers, but like, yeah, he's going to have his work cut out for him this year. That's for sure. He's going to earn that money. Um,
he has to.
but yeah, I mean, sleeper comeback player of the year candidate because he's going to throw 600 passes.
Yeah. Um, yeah. No, we talked about them plenty.
Yeah, that's
The
enough. The
New York
Washington or
Football Giants.
the New York Giants. Kind of the year you would expect when everyone your dirty laundry was aired and you traded away your best player. See, I love
Yeah,
the
that
part that
too.
gets underrated. I hate to keep talking about this, but there's two parts of that I really loved. One, that the GM made it very, very clear that he didn't want to franchise tag him and trade him just because he didn't want to deal with like the drama of the franchise tag. And I'm like, you fucking clown. You didn't want to do your job, so it's easier to just let him walk for nothing. Two, the owner, it's the line from the owner where he's like, okay, but I need you to like understand I have to have someone on the season tickets. I need to put someone on the tickets so I can sell them to people to come watch this team that hasn't been very good recently. And it really does underline like you do it makes understanding the NFL and like professional sports in general make so much more sense when you do realize at the end of the day like it's less most owners aren't overly concerned with winning a championship. It's about selling tickets and making a product that isn't offensive to the human soul. And it really does. And it's like, yeah, that's why the Cleveland Browns pay so much to keep Myles Garrett. That's why the Raiders pay so much to me. At the end of the day, it's like, honestly, it's not even about the winning. It's about like, we have to like show people that we're trying. We have to show our fans that we're trying, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I just love, they were 2-3 about a quarter of the way through the season, went on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 game losing streak. It would have been impossible for them to lose the number one overall pick. Like literally the game before the one that ruined everything, they lost to the Falcons 34-7 with 3 defensive touchdowns allowed. And then they go out and play the next game and beat the Colts, a somehow sadder franchise, 45-33. Drew Lock has a game. Malik Neighbors has 171 receiving yards, and Drew Lock has a game that, in terms of EPA, is only comparable to Peyton Manning games and Tom Brady when he had Randy Moss,
Mm-hmm.
which cost them the number one overall pick. But that's okay because with the third overall pick, they were able to get possibly the best player in the draft, Abdul Carter, who has looked fucking awesome. And I really am like, oh man, actually the Bills did the right things throwing that final game because if he was on the Patriots,
Yeah.
and also they traded back into the first round to get Jackson Dart, the quarterback from Ole Miss. And I was going to do a whole spiel about like bad process that you just got out of a situation where you felt the need to reach for a quarterback with Daniel Jones. And then you weren't 100% committed to him, but you felt the need to pay him anyway. And then that kind of screwed everything up. I was going to chastise them for basically doing the exact same thing, but everyone seems to like him in the locker room. He's looked shockingly good in the preseason. Um, uh, and maybe it'll work. You want to know something crazy? I actually think the Giants could be sneaky good this year.
I disagree. I think
I
it's the Bears
They're
from
not going to
last
be
year's
good,
scenario.
but they could be decent. They might be the Pacer team actually.
I
I'm realizing.
I wouldn't even go that far just because it's I think the biggest thing is they have to play their division, which Washington and the Eagles alone. They're playing the NFC North, which is another couple of heavy hitting teams. AFC West, some more heavy hitting teams. I just I don't think they're going to be good because I don't think they've done enough to counteract the strength of schedule that they have.
Hmm.
If that makes
Okay,
sense.
that is fair. Their
I
schedule
think
is
I think if
brutal.
you put them in one of the South divisions or something like that, different story. Or if the division as a whole did worse, different story. I just don't think they did enough to counterbalance the abs the some of the monsters that they're gonna fight. Like, I think the only way this could be worse is if they like threw on the fucking Ravens and Bills onto their schedules. But they got the Patriots and Saints instead.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, all right. Here's if I may argue. Let's just say Russell Wilson wasn't particularly good last year, but he was
sure.
competent for the most part.
He,
Jackson Dart
yeah,
is a wild card. He might be good. Malik Neighbors is objectively already kind of quietly in the top 5 wide receiver discussion. He looked incredible last year when he was healthy. And they have the one thing that everyone is obsessed with, a great defensive line.
they do have a
Abdul
good
Carter's
defense.
great. Right. He already looks amazing. Dexter Lawrence is probably one of the 2 or 3 best interior defensive linemen in the league. They got Brian Burns, and Kayvon Thibodeau hasn't quite lived up to the hype. Like, he's got good analytics numbers, but not good numbers.
Mm-hmm.
But like when you're like the 5th pass rusher on your team, and it's Kayvon Thibodeau, that's a hell of a place to be. And I'm like, if you told me they were 7-9 and like the vibes were better, I could believe that. I think my biggest hurdle is just like you do need to play Jackson Dart at least half the year. You have to definitively know if he's good or not. Like both
Yes.
eye test and like wins wise, because like the next 2 quarterback classes are much too good to do again, it's the Justin Herbert thing where you could have had Justin Herbert if you just threw Daniel Jones to the curb and you didn't want to. Like you have to at least learn that lesson of like, if you are not 100% certain that Jackson Dart is going to be a reliable playoff level quarterback, he doesn't have to be Josh Allen good. He just has to be able to get to the playoff. Like, can you get him to Geno Smith level? If you are not 100% sure of that, you got to Josh Rosen, the poor kid, which isn't fair, but like, it's kind of how the meta works now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
Not really. I mean, yeah, no.
Um,
My stance is pretty consistent with. Yeah, I think they're fucked purely based off of strength of schedule.
yeah, it is I want to be proven right on this because it would be kind of cool. Do we do the Eagles or do we save them for last?
Um, let's do the Eagles because I have actually more thoughts on the Commanders than the Eagles.
Yes, the Philadelphia Eagles, who had the sort of,
The Super
well, it
Bowl
started
win.
out as a season from hell, but then
Yeah,
turned into
I
a
think
charmed
Sirianni
run.
shaved his head and then
Yes,
and then it
like a
went
reverse
well.
Samson, suddenly gained superhuman coaching ability. Yes, after the bye week, where things were looking a little rough at 2-2, they kind of realized this is going to be. We are fundamentally changing how this offense is run. The defense locked in, and they went on a dream run where they only lost 1 out of their last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, cruised through the playoffs with only a few things to
Yep,
sweat about, and then had one of the most dominant Super Bowl performances in
an
recorded history.
absolute ass kicking.
I love that I said recorded history as if this were like the Olympics where they're like ancient times
Yeah,
ones and not like every Super Bowl has happened in the existence of cable.
yeah. No,
But
yeah. Post bye week, they just woke up and were like, oh, we should actually like try. Like Sirianni shaved his head. We should probably do something with that.
right.
Um,
Well, people who are like so surprised as they're cruising through the playoffs, I'm like, they've kind of just been the best team all year outside the first month. And it's like, all right, well,
yeah,
no one does the preseason anymore. The
and
first month
then
is always rough. It's like a
and
pancake.
and then their playoff picture was a fucking rematch zone. They opened against the Packers. Packers' last game of the year was against them. They
Mm.
played the Rams in November. Um, and they had quite the snow game with just running backs and not even running backs. It was Saquon Barkley sprinting up and down the field, and then they were 1-1 against the Commanders, um, and then an absolute slobber knocker of the game, 55-23, with by far one of the best moments of watching football live, of the Commanders being warned that the refs could just award a touchdown.
I forgot about that.
That happened. And then the Super Bowl, where 2 years ago they lost to the Chiefs in a very close game, and it was basically like the Jalen Hurts is taking things personally tour of that for that game, where it's like everyone was like the picture of him surrounded by Chiefs confetti last year, and then the picture of him looking at the TV screen where everybody's picking the Chiefs to win in front of him, and it's like, all right, I'm gonna prove these people wrong. And
Right.
it's the real score was 40-6, because that's what the Chiefs started scoring again when the Eagles pulled all their starters, and you have like Kenny Pickett and backups playing in the Super Bowl, just cause so people could get reps, but they just got dog walked, and
Right.
uh, did,
That's
did
that's wild.
suffer some some losses in the defensive department with people going other places, but also they kind of made up for it a little bit. Jihad Campbell's looking good. It it would be harsher losses if like Jalen Carter wasn't as good and stuff. But yeah, that's my thoughts about them. Pretty much.
Yeah, it's like I don't know. They kind of just they lost people obviously because that always happens whenever people reasonably are like, cool, I want my Super Bowl. I'm going to get my Super Bowl appropriate payday. But they didn't lose any of it. Like they kept the core. They repaid Saquon. They have all of their cool young guys. They paid oh my god, the linebacker. I'm blanking on his name right now. Linebacker. I'm gonna keep yelling linebacker at you. Linebacker. Zach Bond. Weren't going to bail me out on that one? All right. Well, yeah, they brought back Zach Bond. They have Carter and Davis locked down. Davis seemingly taking his conditioning more seriously. They don't have to worry about Quinion or Cooper DeJean for a while. Blankenship's back. I've listened to sports radio and they've had a lot of hand wringing about like cornerback, but it's like it's luxury problems. It's the problems you have when you just won a Super Bowl with a enormously stacked roster sort of situation. You know, the kind of stuff you don't have to worry about. And
Yeah, there's no real
yeah,
worries.
right. Because here's the thing: even if they don't win the Super Bowl, it's not the end of the world because the roster is like built in. Although an interesting discussion point is like they were talking about it in the context of the Philadelphia Phillies, who like kind of won their World Series a little earlier than they were supposed to. They won in 2008, proceeded to lose in 2009, and then they tried one more time in like 2011 to get back with the four aces and didn't do it. It is like the advantage of losing a Super Bowl and then winning is you kind of can feel content as this
Mm-hmm.
being like the sort of crowning achievement. Like the Phillies feel like they left something on the table because it's like, well, hold on, this is a young team. This should be the start of something. Whereas this, it's like, this could be the culmination. Even if they don't win another Super Bowl, you are kind of like, yeah, but we went through all of that. We went through a Super Bowl loss. We went through an embarrassing wild card loss, and we finally reached the mountaintop.
Mm-hmm.
Even if deep down you're like, yeah, but this team's still great. They should probably win at least one more. Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's such an interesting, different vibe. Honestly, it's so funny that most of the hand wringing this offseason's just been about like, but it's Hurts really good. Like,
which is absurd. Like,
yeah,
honestly,
it's just kind of
unobjectively, it seems absurd. Where it's just like this guy's the Super Bowl MVP. Like,
he's
at,
been arguably the best player on the field for two Super Bowls now.
yeah, like
And
at
like, if we
least,
want to quibble about regular season, fine. But like, the Super Bowl's what matters.
yeah, at least give him like a top 5 spot, like that, because everyone's like, is he even top 10? It's like, I think the best
That's
argument
insane.
I saw was like It's like, yeah, at this Super Bowl he had like Saquon Barkley and stuff too. But like, let's not forget he took the team to the Super Bowl with Miles Sanders as the starting running back, and
Yes. And again, was the best player on the field
in
by
the
a country mile.
yeah. So I'm
Yeah, here's the thing.
excited.
I would gladly take some of the Hurts games where he only throws 100 yards if Josh Allen had a Super Bowl. I don't care. I'd rather be the best player in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm excited because a lot of these there's a bunch of rematches
Mm-hmm.
this season, and I like it. I mean, there's they're playing the Bills in December, but they have
Oh,
the
I'll talk about the
Buccaneers
Bills
once
later.
again in September. They have the Chiefs in week 2 because week 1 is by far one of the best possible things of a huge rivalry game. Uh, Actually, in between, so it's like there's the Cowboys, then the Chiefs, then the Rams, and then the Buccaneers, where it's just like, all right, this is gonna be a bunch of rematches from last year, mixing things up with the Broncos and a relatively different Giants and Vikings. But they play the Packers, they play the Lions. I'm
Um,
excited.
well, here's my hot take. Eagles Chiefs is a better rivalry than Bills Chiefs. Because for it to be a rivalry, you have to like,
There's got to be some
the
give
other
and
team has to
go.
win, right?
Yeah,
Like you can't lose to a team 4 times in the playoffs and consider it a rivalry still. Like even Peyton finally got over the hump after 3. Um, but like, yeah, I'm just excited. Honestly, it is kind of nice to just be here for the Eagles season where I'm like, I'm just excited to see how it goes.
yeah. No, they have a very like there's very clear bones to pick with each other, based off of last game, which was an absolute like the Super Bowl was a slaughter. There's no other way to describe it. It was a slaughter.
It was non-competitive. It's so crazy how quickly that devolved. Or literally halfway through the first quarter, you look at Travis Kelsey and Patrick Mahomes, and you're like, they don't look like they want to be here anymore.
Yeah,
And you're like, oh boy.
you gotta
Um,
watch that episode of the Chiefs documentary, the last one, where it's like we're documenting this record-breaking season,
God,
and
they really
it's
thought they were gonna three-peat.
for the three-peat, and them just getting absolutely dog walked. It wasn't even like cute, like
Right. It's the kind
it
of loss
felt
that you can't even have intellectual thoughts about it. You just kind of sit there like like a dude sports radio and just like
yeah.
that game, that game.
Yeah, like
Um,
it was like, all right, first quarter, Eagles are up 7-0, nothing to be concerned about or anything like that. And then it's like, field goal, nice, pick six, touchdown pass, and then it took literally to the last 30 seconds of the third quarter for the Chiefs to win, score, not even win. And then the Eagles were
oh,
just like, let's just phone it in.
it really is like a. It's the kind of game where you go like double or nothing. If you score this one touchdown, we'll erase all the other ones just
Yeah,
because we're that confident. Um, But yes, and to wrap up our NFC discussion, the Washington Commanders, kind of the dream season Cinderella season last year,
real like
historic production on fourth down, historical production in one score games, ended up 12-5. Had 2 great playoff wins before losing to the Eagles in a game that was probably more competitive than the score would suggest, but a few
it was.
untimely turnovers did them in. Um,
Yeah,
they are weird because the team is largely the same team with a few additions. They brought in Debo Samuel, who I really like, and I think he's going to be a sleeper, like great offensive player this year. Because again, we forget he had pneumonia last year. And it's like, yeah, my
I
dad
think
had pneumonia in May, and he's still struggling to talk. Like, you're telling me this dude played football like that?
I think I'm more looking at him being on the team and stuff now of like he wasn't the biggest producer out of San Francisco because of that, but also the fact
Mm-hmm.
of like San Francisco had like five the guys at each position.
Mm-hmm.
Washington, like sure they have like they have Terry McLaurin, but it's like they didn't really have a quality wide receiver too that was like,
Right.
all right, this guy's a threat. Like the Eagles have AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, where it's just like, who do you want to consider to be wide receiver one today? Like, and
Right.
they didn't really have that, and I feel like they now have that.
Right. I do. It is interesting because I do feel like the vibes are weird because most of the offseason was spent with this weird, like, back and forth with Terry McLaurin not wanting to pay him and also getting rid of Brian Robinson Jr., who, like, is he a top flight running back? No, but he was good. And it's more just like, I guess my question is, like, why are you fucking with the vibes now with Josh Harris? Look, I know, like, you oversaw a terrible era of Sixers basketball that's resulted in nothing but misery, but, like, the vibes are good right now. We should be striking when the iron's hot. We shouldn't be
Yeah.
playing around with like trading people or like stringing out contracts. Like, I think they are one of the highest variance teams because I could absolutely see them regressing to the mean and being more missing the playoffs. But like, also like they could, it's like, again, the margins could get thinner. They could win less one-score games. But what if they do just achieve all of that again? I'm curious what you think.
I'm 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 nervous, but also not nervous. I this is in my this might be in my opinion the team to watch, at least of this division, where it's just like the Giants are gonna get fucked because they didn't, like I said, they didn't really do enough to counteract just the strength of schedule and stuff. But they have
Mhm.
potential to show up. And then the Cowboys just shot themselves in the foot yesterday. Um, the Eagles are still a Super Bowl winning team. And then it's like the Commanders. It's like they did, they kind of like they clearly earned a playoff spot. They had a couple huge upsets in the playoff picture. Um, were they always the best team on the field? I could be persuaded to say no. Like even though that they won some of the games, but it's like, yeah, you
Mhm.
guys still you kind of balled out with a rookie quarterback from like the he was the second, third pick. No, he was the second pick because Drake May
Yes.
was third.
Mhm.
And like you balled out hard for him, so it's like, all right, will you hit your sophomore slump? That is
Right.
that is the question of their season.
It is funny to think about in the context of like watching the sophomore slump for CJ Stroud, where it's like, well, he more or less had the same numbers and they still won a playoff game.
Yeah,
And it is like our again, it's the
they just
perception of a
refused to
sophomore
give him
slump
an
because we
offensive
think
line.
exactly. Well, they need, it's still not very good. I'm very worried about the Texans. But, like, it's the illusion that in our heads, progress always has to be linear. If a player is this good this year, with more time, he'll be this good. And it's like, no, sometimes you're just consistently good. So,
Yeah.
like, it will be interesting to see how people, beyond just like how they actually do, how people perceive this year for the Commanders.
Yes.
Like, they could be like 2 games worse. They could be like 10-7 or whatever the stupid new record system is, but still be largely the same level of good. But it'll feel so much worse because like we're like, well, if they went 12-5 this year, surely they can go 13-3. You know what? Yeah, from now on, I'm doing the regular records. I'm tired of this extra game. It fucks
Yeah.
up my head so much in terms of mathing out how many wins everyone has.
Also, they play the Lions. A fun rematch.
You love your
I,
rematches.
I love I love storytelling. I mean, if that's not clear about my like
That
for
is
them, I
yeah,
love
it is a wrestling
storytelling.
thing.
It's
I
wrestling.
get
It's
that.
D&D. It's I love good storytelling. Um, and I think that this is they have potential for with their schedule some good like storytelling matches because they play the Lions again, but they also play the Chiefs. So we get to see, and I don't think either team. I mean, the addition of Debo is a pretty drastic change in their favor, but you don't
Mhm.
really see like too many crazy drastic changes. Um, so it's like this could be a theoretical. Hey, what if we beat the Eagles in the conference round last year? Like, how would this matchup go? um,
Mhm.
which could have different feelings. So it's like I think it's fun. I'm a little disappointed they have the Eagles in the last week, just because I would like it to be like I think those two are the biggest competitors for the one seed of this division
Mhm.
now more than ever. So it's like, all right, like I feel like it's gonna be either like come down to this, or it's going to be like already decided by then. And like if it was, I'd rather them if it's like two teams coming down to it. I'd rather them be facing other people in the other teams in their division, just because it's like, all right, you have to rely on two games and not just one.
Mhm.
Because as of right now, my opinion of that week 17 of Cowboys Giants is going to be irrelevant. That game is irrelevant.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's I think I think this is the maybe this might be the Pacer team. Depending on how they do. They're still relatively fresh as
Right.
their current entity with like Elko
Yeah.
and stuff.
Right. Because if they regress to the mean and you're like a team with a lot of like sort of call up veteran, like again, they're the oldest team in the league, if you can
Mm-hmm.
believe that, despite their quarterback. Um, because again, they just got a lot of wily like 2-year contract veterans. And it's
Yeah.
like if you want to tell me like the sort of like, that sort of coalition with a top flight quarterback, like I could believe that they again, if they go to 10-7, that does become the good Pacer team of like, you know, if you can't beat them, you're definitely not good. But if you can beat them, you're good.
Yeah.
I'm not willing to rule that one out.
You know what? Maybe this might be a bold
Let's
take.
pencil that
Maybe
one in.
yeah, they could be penciled in. I would also be willing to consider like the Rams for the NFC Pacer.
That's a good one.
Yeah, Washington. Depending on how sophomore Jalen Daniels goes, but
Mhm.
the Rams could be the Pacer. All right, Carter. It's
Yeah,
been
that's another good one.
a little
Shall
bit.
I wrap us up for now?
Yeah, we don't want to put out another. This is a movie in itself. We don't want to put out the Star or the Lord of the Rings uncut for this.
Christ on heaven. Well, we'll work. Well, as we continue to work on brevity this season, we will be back with the AFC, where my homer picks are who will rise, who will fall. Will Kansas City actually miss the playoff? Probably not. But we can speculate. And until then, have a fabulous evening, everyone.